Hello and welcome to my build guide for the Sabre-Staff, or indeed a normal lightsaber should you wish. Please be aware that I'm not actually building a staff saber in this video. This is more about schematics, links, components you're going to need and sort of general advice. I'm not actually building one in this video because I don't have one to build, quite simply. So just please be aware of that. I don't want you to waste your time watching it hoping to see me soldering things, because that's not what I'm going to be doing. So first of all, we'll have a look at the wiring diagram for the electrics themselves. If you are not familiar with wiring schematics, this might all look a little bit Greek, but it's actually quite simple. So what we'll do, starting from the top going down, at the very top of the picture there you can see we have an 18650 3.7 volt battery. This is the same type of battery that you'll find in vapes. So they're readily available from any vape shop or indeed online. Just be aware that if you do buy one online, make sure you get a good quality one. Try not to buy the cheap Chinese ones that come in packs of 5, because they're actually not very good and some of them aren't very safe. So buy a proper branded one such as Samsung or Sony or something like that. So what you can see there, going from the battery, obviously you have a positive terminal and a negative terminal. The positive terminal splits 3 ways. So as it comes off the right hand side of the battery there, we can see that it feeds 3 appliances. It goes straight to the VIN pin on the core FX Sabre board in the middle. This is the voltage in pin for that, so it powers the board. It goes to the switch charging port on the right hand side there, which we'll come on to in a moment. And it also goes down to the 3-watt RGB LED down at the bottom. This is the main LED for the Sabre, or LEDs plural if you're going to use 2 of them and you're going to make a double-ended Sabre. You'll notice there's a 100 ohm resistor in line there that goes down to the 3-watt LED as well, so that's just something to be aware of. Moving down to the right hand side there, you can see we have a switch charging port which has 3 wires. One has the positive feed from the battery, one has the negative side of the battery, and you've also got the blue line there which goes to the negative on the board. Now I'll show a link and a picture for these later on, but essentially this switch charging port allows you to charge your battery in situ. So you don't have to remove the battery from the Sabre every time you want to charge it. This makes life a lot easier because you're not pulling wires and things out every time you want to get to a battery. You can literally push it all inside, leave it in there and charge it externally through the charging port. Going over to the left hand side then, you can see we have a 12mm switch. The switches come in 2 varieties. They come in momentary or latching. So a momentary switch is quite simply a switch. You press it, it turns something on and it turns it off again. The switch doesn't actually change position. A latching switch is more like a light switch. It's the kind of switch where when you push it, it clicks in, and when you push it again, it clicks out. Okay, so make sure for your Sabre board you will most probably need a momentary switch, not a latching switch. The only Sabres that I know that use the latching switch are the Master Replicas type, because they have a button that you physically slide forward or slide back to turn the Sabre on, rather than just push it once or twice to turn the Sabre on or off. Hopefully that makes sense. On the switch you'll notice you have 2 pairs of wires going to it on the diagram. You have a red and a black coming from the SW pins on the main board, and you also have another red and black coming from the ACC port on the board with again a 100 ohm resistor in line. So the 2 wires on the right hand side as you look at it that go to the SW port, these are quite simply the switch wires. So if you didn't have a switch there and you just had bare-ended wires, you could touch the wires together and the board would power up. You touch them again to turn the board off. So this is just the main switch wires. The ACC wires are for the LED that is built into the switch. You'll notice in the video the switch actually lights up. So when the Sabre is turned off, the switch flashes every couple seconds, and when the Sabre is on, the switch stays on. So the switch obviously has an LED built into it. So that's why you've got 4 wires going to the switch rather than 2. 2 power the LED and 2 actually operate the switch itself. The ACC letters on the board simply stand for accent. It's to wire in accent lights. So you don't even necessarily need to have an illuminated switch or an angel eye switch as they're known. You could have any number of LEDs wired onto that. if you wanted to drill 50 holes in your Sabre and have LEDs all over the damn thing, you could do, and you would wire them into that accent LED port. So again, when it's off, they flash every couple seconds, and when it's on, they stay on. So again, you can use as many LEDs as you want. The LEDs that are built into the switches are quite sensitive in terms of voltage, and that's why we have a resistor in line, just to make sure we don't blow the LED that's built inside the switch. Otherwise it means you've got to buy another switch, and whilst they're only a couple of pounds each, it's still annoying. I know, because I've done it on a number of occasions just trying to test it out, forgotten it needs a resistor and just wired it straight onto the battery, and obviously it pops the LED, so that's why we have a resistor on there. And then finally at the bottom of the diagram you can see we have the LED itself, or LEDs as I said earlier if you are making a double-ended Sabre. So we've got on there 3-watt RGB LED, so the power output for the LED is 3 watts, and the one in question has 3 LEDs built into it, a red, a green and a blue. So with that type of LED you have a number of solder pads on the LED itself, and whichever wire you solder onto, or sorry, whichever pad you solder your wire onto is the colour you'll get. So obviously if you solder to the negative pad of the red LED, you'll get red. Solder it to the blue negative pad, you'll get blue, etc. You'll also notice that the negative goes back to the board, so this is how the board turns the LED on and off, and the positive for it, as we saw earlier, comes directly from the battery with the resistor in line, again just to make sure we don't blow the LED. You'll also notice there's a third wire going to the LED, which on the board is labelled CF and is a dotted orange line, or is meant to be a dotted orange line. Excuse my poor diagram. The purpose of that is the flash on clash, or clash flash, depending on how you say it. This basically means that when you hit something with the Sabre, it's got a sensor built into it and it will flash. Now you can make it flash whatever colour you wish. If you were to solder the flash on clash wire to the blue pad, for example, and solder the main negative to the red pad, it would be red by default, and then when you hit something with it, it would go blue. You can also use combinations of colours as well. If you were to bridge all 3 solder pads, the red, the green and the blue, then the colour would be white. And if you were to bridge the red and blue pads, you'd get purple. So on my old Sabre I had red as the default colour, and then the flash on clash wire was soldered to both the red and blue pads. So it was red by default, and when you hit something with it, it went purple, which I thought was pretty cool. You don't have to have that flash on clash, hence why it's a dotted line. It's just there in case you want to use it. Each board will have a slightly different wiring diagram. This is just purely for the board that I've used, which is the basic Core FX Sabre board. One interesting thing to note with the Sabre boards is that if you don't have sound, they're very cheap. So these Core FX Sabre boards are around £15. They're very cheap. To have an equivalent board with sound goes up to around £50–60. So if you want sound, then it's going to cost you a lot more, but if you don't have sound, it can be done very cheaply. With a double-ended Sabre, so a staff Sabre, you can't really have sound because there's nowhere to mount a speaker. In a normal Sabre you can mount the speaker in the hilt and obviously have your sounds, but with a double-ended Sabre obviously you've got a blade on both ends, so there isn't really anywhere to put a speaker. And because the double-ended Sabre is more of a stunt Sabre than a showpiece, again you'll probably not be bothered too much by having sound on it. So no sound makes it much cheaper. That's just something to note. Okay, hopefully that's made some more sense of that diagram. You get a better idea of where things are wired to and why. And next I'll go on to show you some pictures of the components you'll need, where to obtain them and what sort of prices you're looking at. However, first let's have a quick look at the components required to make one of the blades for the Sabres. So starting from the left hand side, you can see we have a heatsink. The LEDs you use are relatively high power for what they are, and they do get hot, so you will need a heatsink. Next you have the LED itself. It's a 3-watt star RGB LED we've used there. Star just refers to the shape. It's a star shaped LED, that's not a manufacturer name. Then we have a lens holder. This is just a small plastic cup which holds the lens, which is the next part. So the LED shoots a very direct beam of light, almost like a laser, So we want to use a lens to disperse that light to the left and right hand sides to light up the entire blade and not just bounce off the mirror down at the bottom there. The tube itself at the bottom, as you can see, is a polycarb tube, so it's a high carbon polythene. Don't be tempted to use an acrylic tube, they will smash the first time you drop it. The polycarb tubes aren't that more expensive, they're a much better investment. You can also see at the top there we have cellophane, and I've got 4 to 6 foot per blade. So the cellophane is just a clear cellophane that's available online or from a local florist. You roll up about 4 to 6 foot length of it, and then you carefully push it down inside the tube, and then allow it to unravel itself and expand inside the tube, a bit like if you were rolling up a poster to put it inside a cardboard tube. You roll it up smaller than the diameter of the tube, put it inside, and then it unravels itself to grip the edges. This works as a diffuser, very similar to how strip lights work. If you don't have the cellophane, you get a very uneven spread of light down the tube, so don't be tempted to skip that part. You will need some kind of cellophane inside the tube to act as a diffuser. Down at the end then you have the blade tip, a little clear mushroom shaped piece of plastic. They come in a rounded tip or like a bullet shaped tip. For the Sabre I've got them rounded purely because if I hit myself in the face with it I'm not going to open myself up, or nowhere near as much. And you have a small round sticky back mirror that sits on the back of that blade tip, so any excess light gets bounced back down the tube, and again it gives you a much better spread of light, especially at the end of the Sabre. Hopefully that all kind of makes sense. And then we'll look at some links. So a few of these parts are available on eBay. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but it should give you an idea. At the top we have a pack of 500 ohm 1 watt resistors, which are again about £1.50. Remember, you'll want one of these for each of the positives for anything lighting up you have, such as the blade itself, or the LED for the blade, or the accent LEDs. Next one down is one of the star LEDs. You can see the solder pads on that one. That's a single colour. It's only got 2 solder pads on each side. It's a positive and a negative, that'll be one colour. If you had a 3 colour LED you'd have 6 solder pads on there. Next one down is a small round sticky back mirror. This is to stick on the end of the blade to bounce the light back down. Next one down is the 12mm momentary push switch with angel eye with the built-in LED. And then the very last one there is a roll of clear cellophane, which again you can get on eBay or you can buy from a local florist to act as a diffuser for the blade. And then finally we have some miscellaneous links for things not necessarily available on eBay, although you may be able to find them in your region. The top one is for a Sabre board. Again, as I said earlier, the type of board you have is up to you. A basic board with no sound is quite cheap. If you want something a bit more advanced with sound, it's going to cost you more money, obviously. The one at the top there is from JQ Sabres, but you could again buy them from any Sabre retailer. The next one down is for the switch charging port. So again, a charging port with your 3 terminals on it. There's a few different designs there. This is how you can charge your battery in situ without having to remove it from the Sabre. Next one down is the clear plastic shop, which is where you buy your clear tubes from. As you can see there, they are 25mm diameter with a 3mm wall thickness, and these specific ones come in a 1000mm length. They're only about £10 each, and obviously for a dual bladed Sabre you'll need 2 of them. Next one down then is what they call a kill key. This is also from JQ Sabres, although again any lightsaber retailer, or you can make one yourself. The idea for a kill key is that when your Sabre is not in use, you can push this into the switch charging port and it will turn off all your accent LEDs, so the battery isn't being used. Otherwise, your accent LEDs will flash all the time, which is obviously going to drain the battery. Not much, but it will still drain the battery. So a kill key of some sorts, if you're going to use a switch charging port, is essential. You plug it into the charging port just to disconnect the battery completely when it's not in use. And then finally down at the bottom there's 3 separate bits from the custom Sabre shop, which is a US based supplier. On the left there you have the rounded tips for the end of the Sabre. Next one you have a lens, and then the next one is a lens holder with a built-in heatsink. So again, you can put your lens in there, your LED on the back of it, pass your wires through the hole in the heatsink, screw it up nice and tight, and that obviously holds everything as it should do. The only thing I've not talked about here is the actual hilt itself. Again, what you use is up to you. You can use PVC plumbing pipe, which is obviously very cheap, very easy to work with. You can use aluminium, should you be able to find hollow aluminium bar. Or again, as I've done, use a piece of stainless steel. It's about £12 from a local hardware store. I've got enough that I could actually make two from one length, or I may even make a single bladed sabre to match this one. But again, what you use for the hilt is completely up to you. Just be aware you will need to have a minimum internal diameter of 25mm to accept the blades, so make sure it has that internal diameter at least. One thing I did forget to say was about charging of the sabre. Like I said earlier on when we were looking at the wiring schematic, you have a switch charging port in it, so you can charge the battery in situ. Now the type of charge you'll need is a 5.5mm barrel jack, or DC barrel jack, as you can see in the picture there. The one in the picture is one you can solder directly onto. As you can see, the black plastic sheath unscrews and you've got two terminals there to solder your wires onto. So you could use any USB lead, which is what I've used, to just find a USB lead perhaps for charging a mobile phone. You can snip the charging port off the end of it and then solder it onto this barrel jack. That way you can charge your sabre either from a USB port on a computer or from a USB plug. And that is pretty much it, guys. So I hope that's come in some kind of use. Again, apologies I don't actually have one to build in front of me that I can show you, but hopefully, again, like I say, that should come in quite handy. Just remember that when you're soldering up all your wires to build your sabre, space is of a premium inside. You'll be surprised how much space just a lot of wires take up. So try and use a thin wire. What I've used is a standard Cat5 internet cable. Cut it down, strip the insulation off it, and then you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 cores inside it. Nice thin wires that you can use. They'll handle the power, no problem at all, and this is going to save you a lot of space inside. Don't use thick power wires because you'll just never fit it all inside. Any questions or anything I haven't made clear, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll try and get back and answer them as much as I can. Thanks, bye.